This is an exclusive excerpt from the Stuph File Program with Peter Anthony Holder.
There was a character that was every boy's crush and every girl's best friend. It was Mary Ann from Gilligan's Island. The embodiment of that character was brought to life by actress Dawn Wells. Dawn became yet another victim of COVID-19 as she passed away on December 30th at the age of 82. Dawn was a guest on my old radio show back in November of 2001. Here is a segment of that conversation now.
Tell us a little bit about Dawn Wells before Mary Ann.
Well, I wasn't in the business for very long. I'm a graduate of Stevens College, which is an all-women's college, and University of Washington in Seattle with a BFA in theater. And I had a choice to make between to go to Los Angeles or New York. At that point, that was the only two places you could earn a living. And I was pre-med before I went into theater, so I gave myself 2 years and said, I'll see if I get a job. And I chose Los Angeles because there was more work for me. Most of everything in New York at that time was musical comedy. I was born and raised in Nevada, fourth generation. My great-great-grandfather drove stagecoach during the gold rush, so I'm a real Western girl. I did, as a matter of fact, I did a show in your country. I did a show called Dawn Wells' Real Adventures with Kathy Ruddick, a fishing show, fly fishing, all over the world. I guess before Gilligan's Island, I worked pretty regularly, never any really small roles, because I think I was really well trained and I was a perfect type. And when Gilligan's came along, I was a replacement, as you know if you watched the special.
Right.
And I just auditioned and got the role, and boy, that was it. You know, it changes your world.
And we had Bob Denver on this program. As a matter of fact, we had an opportunity to work with him because we did, as part of Just for Laughs, a tribute to Sherwood Schwartz. So I had the opportunity.
Great.
So I had the opportunity to work with both the gentlemen. That was back in '94. And the thing that's always interesting about talking with Bob is, of course, as you know, he's a well-educated man, a very intelligent man, very articulate man, which, of course, is a lot different than Gilligan. And so I wanted to ask you the similar question. What misconceptions do people have of you because they think you're just Mary Ann?
Well, I think I'm closer to Mary Ann than Bob is to Gilligan.
Okay.
You know, I mean, Gilligan is such a buffoon kind of character. I think people are kind of surprised. And Bob isn't really funny. He doesn't have a great sense of humor, as the professor really does. Bob is more of a comedic actor. I think there's a lot more levels to me than there is to Mary Ann, but I was raised very similar. I think Mary Ann is a principled, ethic, hardworking, fair, good friend type young lady, and that's the way I was brought up. I mean, I was raised by a mom. My parents were divorced, but my father had a tremendous influence on my life, and I was expected to do things that were good and get good grades and clean up my room and do things like that, you know, that good English and good grammar and manners and all of those things, which I think Mary Ann stands for. I'm more worldly than Mary Ann. My life I've seen more of the world than Mary Ann has, but I think there's quite a bit of me there.
Actually, I want to play a clip from you from when Bob was on the program with us, because we were asking him some questions about being on the show and working with you, and also somebody was talking about people actually meeting Mary Ann, and this is the clip he had from when he was on our program.
Dawn Wells and Russ Johnson, we get together like 2 or 3 times a year, and we get rescued wherever there's a body of water. And it's really fun, because we'll be in an airport, you know, and Dawn will be standing like 10 feet behind me, and some young man in his 20s will come up to me and he'll say, "Oh, I really love the show," and all that. And I say, "Yeah." And I said, "What'd you think of Mary Ann?" He goes, "Oh, wow, she was really great, you know." And I said, "Would you like to meet her someday?" And he goes, "Oh, boy, let me tell you, that would just be, oh, boy." And I said, "There she is." And the guy just turns red, becomes 9 years old right in front of my eyes, can't talk, feet shuffling.
The 3 women, I think, who were a big hit with a lot of kids, even though they may have been overshadowed by their more glamorous sidekicks, would have to be Betty from Betty and Veronica,
Right.
Betty Rubble,
Yep.
and Mary Ann.
Oh, yeah.
Those are the 3.
Over the years, they've had contests wherever I go, and, you know, and they even had national contests to see who the guys like the most, Ginger or Mary Ann. And Mary Ann always wins like 75 at least percent. Vote for Mary Ann.
Your thoughts on that? I mean, you must hear that all the time.
It's sort of become a thing now, and it's actually more of a thing 10 years after the show went off the air than when we were on the air. I think it is, you mentioned the Betty and Veronica, I think it's sort of the old a lifelong dilemma between the girl next door and the sex symbol. And I think nowadays the girl next door is fewer and far between. I mean, there isn't any Marianne on television anymore. We're all pretty sophisticated and pretty worldly. You know, anybody over 12 has sort of had a life now, where Marianne was sort of the last of that era, I think, almost. So I think maybe you're holding her more dear because of it. I don't know.
But yeah, I think even when the show was on, people just seemed to gravitate toward Marianne. I'll use a military example. I would think that, you know, Ginger is the kind of person that the guys in the military would love to see on the USO tour and would probably have a pinup on their locker, but Marianne was the girl in their wallet.
I've never heard that before. Well, Marianne's kind of the marrying kind. Or if you're a girl, she'd be your best friend. She would never try to take your boyfriend away or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that Marianne would, I always say she would cook and sew, you know. She would do all those things that good little housewives are supposed to do. And yet she'd probably help you plow and be a lot of fun. I mean, I think Marianne was a symbol of what was good.
You mentioned Marianne and guys, their knees go weak. What did the reaction
Isn't that
you
wonderful? I'm kind of divorced from that. I mean, I really don't think it's me. It's awfully nice to hear people say that, but I guess in reality, that's really pretty special.
Yeah.
You know, when you really stop and think about that, how many people in a lifetime go through that? I have people come up and have expressed love for 35 years, 3 different generations. That's really very special. In this world today, we can use a little bit more of that, you know?
What do the women say? What about girls who grew up with Marianne?
Marianne was their best friend. No, I mean, I got the most fan mail, and it was equal male and female. I mean, Marianne would be your buddy. She'd be your best friend. She was a good role model. There was never that feeling of competition or jealousy. There never was with Jeannie either, I don't think. Barb Reedon had that same effect. Barb Reedon, the girls liked her as well as the guys liked her. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. So I guess it's a character that you are very, very, very proud of having played.
Yeah. I mean, as an actress, I could say I've done a lot more that I could say I'm prouder of, more complex a character to create. But obviously I've created something that was memorable to somebody, and I don't know that every person would play the character the same way.
Yeah. Another thing that we talked to Bob Denver about is we had something in common, and that is Bob Denver and I are fast talkers. And he said that you're also a fast talker. And here's something he said about that when he was on the show with us 7 years ago.
Extremely fast. And sure would write, 3 pages of dialogue for us, which is supposed to run around 3 minutes. And we do it in 45 seconds, and the script girl will have to go to the phone and say, Sherwood, they did it again. We're 2 minutes short.
Was that a problem you guys had on the show?
Well, no, we once had a director that said Bob and I talked in shorthand. We could get a show done in half the time. That is a problem as an actor. It's a very hard thing to correct.
Mm-hmm.
I enunciate well, so you can hear me, you understand me, but if you try to slow down, a lot of your energy goes. It's a challenge as an actor to slow down and still keep the same energy and actions.
The show you did, Surviving Gilligan's Island, which was on CBS back on October 14th, it was such a labor of love. Clearly it was. It's obvious that you enjoyed your role as Marianne. You enjoy looking back at your role as Marianne. Was there a period of time where you wanted to separate yourself from Marianne?
No, really. I think when you first come off the show, you think, all right, now I'm going to go do something else. I went right back to the stage because I was afraid I'd be playing the Mariannes forever. So I went right back to the theater, in which I was trained, and did, Ibsen and Chekhov and Tennessee Williams, in addition to Neil Simon and a lot of things. So I would continue to grow and to stretch. But I think no one understood it would go on this long. I mean, we're the longest-running show in the history of television syndication. We've never been off the air since 1964, and we're in 30 languages still. So who would know that? I mean, who would know that you would pick something that would stick with you forever? I think it's kind of a double-edged sword. You want to say, I can do something else. But I have. Maybe as many millions of people haven't seen it as much as have seen Gilligan's. But my artistic side has been not totally satisfied. I still want to continue doing it. But at least I've been working on something besides just playing that character. And I see no reason to deny it. I'm greeted with love everywhere, all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those gambles you take when you do a television series.
One of the things that was brought up in the movie, which Bob Denver did mention on the program, but I want to hear your side of the story, was when you went to, was it Samoa?
Solomon Islands.
Solomon Islands.
Yeah.
Share that story with her.
Well, I'm a real adventurer. I have trick knees. I've got Joe Namath knees, so I'm not very athletic, but I'm outdoors. and I've climbed the hills of Rwanda with the mountain gorillas, and 5 of my college friends from Stevens, and the president at the time, went to the Solomon Islands. We have 5 women and a National Geographic photographer, and we went to islands that women had never been to before, tourist women had never been to. And we arrived on the island of Sulafu, which is a little island built out on a coral reef. The chief's family had been chief for 19 generations. And as we canoed up, the chief's wife took one look at me and went, "Oh, I know you." And she'd been on the island of Honiara, which is the capital of the Solomon Islands. A big battle in World War II was fought there. And she'd gone to nursing school in the 70s and had come home and watched TV. And now she was on an island with no running water, no electricity. Now I'm fighting in the middle of the Pacific. I know you. So you can't get away from it, no matter where you are.
Tell me, Don, do you have a favorite episode?
Well, I think as actors, we like to do the dream sequences. I think my favorite episode to do, I think the title of it was the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde one, but I got to do an Eliza Doolittle character playing the Cockney accent, and that was fun. I think one of the best written, I thought, was the Hamlet. The takeoff on Hamlet, I thought was clever. There was one episode I thought was kind of cool when Roy Calhoun was our guest, and he was the hunter that had hunted every animal in the world.
Oh, yes.
And he wanted to try to hunt a human, and Gilligan was the target. I thought that was kind of funny. Kind of an interesting plot, actually.
Was there ever a time when you looked at a script and you went, I'm not sure about this?
Most of them. Most of them would say, well, somebody's surfing on and surfing off and doesn't know where they were. Of course, but that was the fantasy.
Did you have opportunities? I know that Bob had a couple of series that he did after the show went off the air.
No,
you mentioned
I have not, no. Well, I did a pilot for Fan Drescher about 5 years ago, which did not sell. But no, I have not done, I haven't done a series since.
Would you still like to do another series?
Yeah, I'd love to, and I'd love to do something like The Practice or something. I'd love to do a Law and Order. I'd love to do a drama. Comedy, of course, is my first. But I'm enjoying the producing end of it. I'm not going to talk about it. I don't want to jinx it. But I've got a couple of projects in the work, which is kind of exciting for me to make that step. I've produced some theater, but I've never done anything in film. I have no desire to direct film at all.
Mm-hmm.
I do in theater, but I just have no desire to make that leap. But producing is fun. I got my hand in everything.
That was actress Dawn Wells, who forever will be remembered as Mary Ann from Gilligan's Island. She died on December 30th at the age of 82. I have to admit, this one stings a little more than others. I had the pleasure of talking both on and off the air on several occasions with Dawn. She was a very, very special person. Plus, her publicist, Harlan Bowl, has been a good friend both to me and this show, and my previous show, for over 30 years now. So I know he's been hit hard by this one as well. Add the fact that she was yet another shining light that has been dimmed due to a pandemic that certainly didn't have to reach these proportions. It's just mind-numbingly frustrating. Anyway, Patreon Stuff File patrons can hear the full conversation with Dawn Wells by going to our Patreon page. And if you're not already a member, become one of the select patrons of the show. Visit patreon.com/The Stuph File Program. I also urge you to go to our website at thestufffile.com to look up show number 0172 from December of 2012 for a more recent conversation with Dawn. You can play that right off the webpage for that show. As a matter of fact, you can check out any of the guests from any of our previous shows, almost 600, going back to all the way to 2009, as the website has been revamped and updated. So check that out at thestufffile.com.
You've just heard an exclusive excerpt from the Stuph File Program with Peter Anthony Holder. To hear any or all of the full hour-long shows, visit thestufffile.com. Stuff is spelled S-T-U-P-H. That's thestufffile.com. A presentation of Flying Fish Communications.